Hello, my name is Kristen Bolden, and I want to welcome you to the other side of history. In this first talk, I would like to give you the history on the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, much of the information for this talk is found in a book, and it's titled Dead Sea Scrolls and the Christian Faith, and it's by William Sanford LaSor. Now, I don't know about you, but I find the study of archaeology interesting. Biblical archaeology, it gives validity to the Bible and to our faith. Solving an archaeological mystery can be as fun as putting together some kind of a jigsaw puzzle or solving some kind of a mystery. Now, one of the most fascinating archaeological discoveries or mysteries was that of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls were first discovered in 1947 in a cave near the Dead Sea. Now later, more of the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 10 more caves in that same area. Now only Cave 1 and 11 produced relatively intact manuscripts. However, there have been tens of thousands of manuscript fragments that have been found. Now, the major texts that were found there in Caves 1 and 11, they were published in the 50s. And today, they're housed there in Jerusalem in the Shrine of the Book Museum. In the June 1, 1954 Wall Street Journal, there was an advertisement, and it said, "The 4 Dead Sea Scrolls, biblical manuscripts dating back to at least 200 BC, are for sale. This would be an ideal gift for an educational institution or religious institution by an individual or group." So the entire Old Testament was found, except the book of Esther, and then more recently they think they have also found fragments of the book of Esther. But how do we know that the scrolls, they date back to at least 200 BC? Well, it's according to carbon dating, textual analysis, and handwriting analysis. That the experts say that the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were written between the mid-3rd century BC and the 1st century AD. The Isaiah scroll has been said to have been written between 335 BC and 107 BC. Also, the cloth covering the scrolls and the clay jars that contained the scrolls, they have been carbon dated to around that time period. From rabbinical literature, we know that the cloth wrappings were used for the covering of manuscripts. The cloth for the scrolls was made out of flax. Some actually had designs woven into them with blue cloth, which I think is a very fitting thing for the Jews, because blue was a symbol of God's law. Now, besides the Old Testament, there were also scrolls that were given as instruction to a community. One is called the Manual of Discipline, and the other is called the Damascus Document. One scroll, called the War Scroll, it describes community members as sons of light who are battling against the sons of darkness. Now, next to the caves, there is a settlement, and it's actually on the top of a hill, and it's known as Qumran. It is not a large settlement. It houses about 150 persons. There is a large dining room that had a bench that was running all around the walls, and it could have been used either as a large dining hall or for large meetings. There's a kitchen and pantry and lots of ceramic vessels. Nearly 1,000 pieces, chiefly of plates and bowls, have been found. Now, there are clay jars, most likely for the storage of grain and other food stuff like oil. Now, what is good about clay is that once it is fired, it is imperishable. Experts date the Qumran jars to the Hellenistic period, which was like 323 to 63 BC. They even had their own pottery factory with pits for tempering the clay, and then there was 2 ovens for firing it. There is also a bathing room with 2 large cisterns or tanks. One had 14 steps that were leading down to it. Water was brought in from natural basins where it would accumulate there during the rainy seasons. And then by aqueduct, it was taken to a large cistern that was south of the building. The large cistern would feed into smaller ones, and there was sinks and a septic tank. The most important find was that of the scriptorium. There was a long, narrow table which did not seem to be used for dining purposes because it was quite a distance from the kitchen. Now, why it is called the scriptorium is because inkwells have been found there. The scriptorium, along with the scrolls that were hidden in the caves nearby, they point to a people who lived there at Qumran and were most likely the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Both the dating of the scrolls in the caves, they match the dating of the materials that are found there in the settlement. Hundreds of coins have also been found, and they date the settlement. As archaeologists have excavated, they found 3 levels to the settlement. The dates of the coins were found there in the first level that were from the 2nd century BC, or 135 BC. This was also that Hellenistic period. Now, the second level had coins that dated from the 1st century AD, which was like 67 to 68 AD. And then the last level had the most recent coins, and they dated from 70 AD to the end of the 1st century AD. Now, names on some of the coins, that would be more commonly recognized, they were of Herod the Great, Caesar Augustus, Herod Agrippa, both the first and second, and Nero. So we see that the dating of the Qumran settlement there, it spans over quite a period of time. The scrolls must also date over a period of time, or centuries, because there is a diversity in handwriting. The scrolls were not all written by the same person or people. There were actually only a dozen repetitions of handwriting that were found. Also, the carbon dating showed that some of the scrolls were older than others. Now the question is, who were these people who lived there at Qumran? Because they most likely were the authors of these Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, until the 1990s, scholars, they almost universally believed that it was the Essenes that were the community who lived there at Qumran, and they wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Essenes, they were a religious community who lived on the western side of the Dead Sea, not far from Sodom. And this is the approximate location of Qumran there and the caves. However, some of the scrolls, like the Temple Scroll, which is 26.7 feet long, and it was found in Cave 11, it's dated as existing long before there was such a thing as an Essene community. The Damascus document and the Manual of Discipline, they are specific instructions to a community, and their teachings do not match those of the Essenes. The Essenes were about 4,000 in number, and the Qumran settlement, it seems to be way too small to have supported 2 separate communities. Now, here are some of the differences between the beliefs of the Essenes and those that were found there in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Essenes, they condemned marriage and any sensual desire. The scrolls, they do not condemn marriage or any kind of sensual desires, except as these led to an immoral life or behavior. In the Damascus document, one of the sins was in marrying more than one woman, or polygamy. And it was also even called harlotry. The congregation or community, they actually included men, women, and children. A supervisor, he was said to be 30 to 50 years and a master in every secret of men and in every language according to their families. And there was instruction for the education of children of all ages. Now at Qumran, there is a cemetery with more than 1,000 graves. Several of the skeletons found were female. The people there at Qumran, and those who were most likely the authors of these Dead Sea Scrolls, do not appear to be monastic. The Essenes had corrupt beliefs. The author, Ellen G. White, says, "The three sects which in Christ's day exercised a controlling influence over the religious beliefs of the Jews were the Sadducees, Pharisees, and Essenes. These sects are mentioned as representatives of those who have not been converted. They had not been sanctified through the truth. Therefore, their ideas were perverse. Self was interwoven in all in which they engaged. They did not feel it to be a special part of their religious program to be one with Christ." Here are some of the perverse ideas of the Essenes that differed from the teachings that are found there in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Josephus, the Jewish Roman historian who lived at that time, he said that the Essenes prayed to the sun and believed in the immortality of the soul. The Essenes were really rather Gnostic in their beliefs. They saw matter as evil, and thus their condemnation of the physical attributes of marriage. They saw God as a spirit, but also man was a spirit, and thus their belief in the immortality of the soul. They thought that the soul had this ethereal pre-existence and a future existence. At the cemetery there at Qumran, there were no valuables that were left in the graves. And this is very unlike many of the graves that have been found by those who did believe in the immortality of the soul. And it's not that these people there at Qumran did not have access to treasure. The copper scroll was found in Cave 3, and it gave directions to places where throughout Israel, gold and other valuables were hidden underground. It is believed that they were treasures from the temple there at Jerusalem. Now the Essenes, they also had an initiation and rites for membership. They believed that the way to become spiritual and good was to be initiated into the teachings of the group. Like the Gnostics or secret societies, they believed that there was a special knowledge to the initiated ones. At admission, the Essene was given 3 badges: an apron, a white garment, and a pickaxe. None of these initiation rites, along with their Gnostic beliefs, are found there in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Also, unlike the Sadducees, Pharisees, and Essenes, the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they seem to understand the relation that is between faith and works. They believed that water was useless in baptism until the heart was cleaned by a spiritual rebirth. The Essenes said that water was sufficient to cleanse. In the Damascus document, it said that a man, while in iniquity, could not cleanse himself with water for impurity. There was to be a confessing and a forsaking of sin before baptism. The water was only an exterior act of what had taken place already in the heart. So these people there that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, they also did not have a balcony attitude, where some Christians see the struggle between good and evil as something that they observe, but they really never really participate in. The scrolls teach that man is involved in this struggle and that there are only 2 groups: those who hate evil and those who hate the truth. They understood that the struggle is within one's own heart, and there is free will and a human responsibility. The Shrine of the Book Museum there at Jerusalem, where the scrolls are kept, it is black and white. This is because the authors saw themselves as sons of light in a world with sons of darkness. Their striving should be our striving also, in being sons and daughters of light in a world of darkness. The Dead Sea Scrolls, they point to the preservation of the Old Testament in its uncorrupted form. Qumran seems to also point to a people who were largely uncorrupted from the errors there of that time. Just as they were representatives of God for that time and they helped to preserve his word, we should also strive to be representatives of God in our time and also preserve his word in our lives and faith. So if you like this talk, I would encourage you to please click on the subscribe button. And I just want to thank you for listening, and God bless.